profits. For full details, go to playradiouk.com/sales or call 01243 55 63 55.
Right now, you can take part in some fantastic games right here at the Play Radio UK network. Simply log on to playradiouk.com/games and you can compete with other Play Radio listeners round the world. You can always play for fun, but if you prefer, you can choose to play for money. Best of all, you can listen to Play Radio UK while you're doing it. playradiouk.com/games. Your fun, your way. Warning, the show you're about to listen to may contain strong language and the content might offend. Tommy and Duncan, distinctively distasteful on Play Radio UK.
Hi guys, how do things sound from this side of the pond, okay?
100%.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. I love the Viz letters, by the way. My favorite is this one. A woman whose daughter was hospitalized in a U.S. tornado told ITV News that God would make her better. Presumably that's a different God from the one that almost killed her with a tornado.
Very good.
Fantastic.
What do you got for us
well,
tonight?
good evening, folks. I thought you might be interested in this. I had a guy on my show on Wednesday afternoon. He was going to join us this evening, but he decided to do MSNBC instead, which I don't understand why MSNBC is more important than us, but however. He is called Dr. Nick Bostrom. He's the director of the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford University. He's the co-founder of the World Transhumanist Association, which now has more than 4,400 members worldwide, co-founder of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, previously lectured at Yale and now at Oxford. The reason I'm telling you all this, all his credentials and that sort of thing, is when you hear his argument, you're going to wonder if he's a crackpot, you know, a nutcase, a Riley Martin. And I want you to know up front that this is a great philosophical mind, because you might never believe it otherwise. So let me tell you what the argument is here. Maybe we can get a sort of a thermometer reading from the guys back at the studio in England. What if I was to ask you what you think of the suggestion that we're all inside right now a computer program, kind of like the Matrix, except there's no biological component of our cells whatsoever. There's no brain in a vat being stimulated electronically, and you don't have a body in a gunk tank somewhere, or anything like that being probed by machines or anything. We're part of a computer simulation. We're simulated. Our world is simulated. When we take part in this broadcast and listen together, we're listening to other simulated people doing a simulated show on a simulated radio station. It's a simulated world. Now, one question it's good to ask up front here is, folks, if this was true and we are living in the simulation, would we know it? Even if it wasn't a very accurate simulation, if we've always been in it and we've never seen the real world, we've got nothing to compare it to. And if we just accept the reality we're presented with, and really we've no other choice, have we? Then we'd have no way of knowing whether we're real or in some kind of computer simulation. Now, I know this is a stretch for some of you, and who am I kidding? It's a stretch for me. So I have some audio here of Dr. Bostrom's interview with me on Wednesday, and I asked him a little bit about why we should even entertain the idea. Let's see if I can get this to work now. Here we go. I've explained it to our listeners as best as I can. Maybe you can just tell me what the theory is in layman's terms.
All right. Well, we first need the concept of an ancestor simulation. An ancestor simulation would be a computer simulation of people like the historical ancestors that we have here on Earth.
Okay.
But not just any computer simulation, but one that would be detailed enough that the simulated people would actually be conscious.
So now,
such a simulation. Sorry.
Current simulations that we have, they're becoming more and more detailed all the time, isn't that right? So at some point, presumably in the future, what you're postulating is that they might get detailed enough to simulate ourselves, to simulate people like us.
Yes, so that would presumably require simulating brains down to the level of individual nerve cells, perhaps, and synaptic connections. Mm-hmm. So it's far beyond any simulations that we have today, or will be able to create in the near future.
So he says if we don't go extinct, before we have the computing power to do these computer simulations, and we decide that we're interested in doing it whenever we find out we can, then we should decide right here, right now, that we're in one already. And first thing I thought was, the guy's a few oats shy of a haggis, a few nuns short of a nun joke.
Yeah, good.
It all sounded a little weird to me. So I have some audio here of him explaining now why we should believe that we're in a simulation already, if we ever produce them at all.
If you assume that the first two possibilities are false, you get the implication that there are many, many more people living in ancestor simulations than there are people living in original runs of history.
Okay, so it's some basic probability theory. It just looks like we would be one of the minority if we were, in fact, the real ones, and everyone else is simulated.
Yes, that's correct. And you can back up this final step with additional arguments. The final step being, if most people like us are simulated and only a tiny minority are non-simulated, then we have strong reason to think that we are probably one of the simulated majority rather than one of the rare exceptions.
So this is when it began to make a little sense to me, Tommy, Stuart, Matt. I'm not sure if you buy any of this, but if there are 6 billion simulated people in a simulated world, and then there are about maybe 1 million simulations, that's 6 billion times 1 million. That's a figure so high we don't even have a word for it. Several, I don't know, billion, zillion simulated people, and we have this statistically insignificant chance now that we're the few in comparison that aren't simulated, the first-run population. The odds really aren't in favor of us being real people at all. And if things are this uncertain, and we don't know anything anymore, I couldn't resist the thought maybe the Beatles were right.
Hey?
We all live in a yellow submarine. Yellow submarine.
I realize it's a long shot, but maybe we all live in the yellow submarine. Inside the bead of sweat on the periscope or something.
Yeah.
By the way, we play a lot of country music out here, and we get sent new music all the time. This is the country version. I couldn't resist it. No, the philosophy is sound. I think the simulation argument is a sound argument, but I'm not quite into it. And so I asked him another question on the radio show on Wednesday, and this is what I asked him.
What do people say when you propose this argument to them? Maybe people that aren't trained in philosophy, or maybe just average Joes on the street. Have you ever kind of proposed this to someone and had them ask you what you're smoking or something? I mean, what do people generally respond with?
Well, the response seems to depend on how directly exposed to the argument they have been. So people who have read the original paper that I published in Philosophical Quarterly a few years ago, or who have heard me give the full explanation, they are usually intrigued and find the argument quite persuasive, most of them. People who read second-hand accounts of it, or third-hand accounts, I think it's increasingly far-fetched, especially if they don't actually hear the argument behind the claim, but just the idea that we are in a simulation.
If you walked up to someone and just said we're in a simulation right now and didn't give any reasons for it, I'm presuming they'd be a little more skeptical than when they've actually read your... It runs to about 11 pages, right, your paper? I've read it over the weekend.
It's a short one. I mean, it's like 10, 15 pages or something.
But, I'm sitting here thinking about this as the guy's talking to me, and I just don't know, folks, if he really believes it himself. The logic is impeccable as far as I can see, but, friends, it's a pretty surprising conclusion. We're all made of silicon, not just Pam Anderson, but all of us.
Steady.
A little shocking. So bearing in mind the three conclusions now, one of which is true. Number one, we go extinct before we get good enough at computers to do it. Number two, we get good enough to make the human simulations, but we decide not to for some reason. Or number three, the only other option, we're in a simulation right now. Bearing those three options in mind, I asked him, really, come on, what do you believe?
What I believe is the simulation argument, but that argument, as I just mentioned, only tries to show that one of three possibilities is correct. And so I'm agnostic as to which of those three possibilities it is.
Right, so you're not exactly arguing that we are in a simulation, you're saying that there's a possibility. Now, I've heard you say a couple of times that you give the chance of us being in a simulation right now, about 20%. So you've assigned one of the other hypotheses a higher chance, right?
Yeah,
do you think we go extinct before we develop the capability, or what do you think is the most likely scenario?
Well, I think I've been quoted as saying that my gut feeling is that there is a 20% probability that we are in a simulation.
But 20% is still pretty damn high. And, if you were to do as Dr. Nick suggests in this paper and maybe you were to assign each of the three options an equal probability of being true, then there's a 33% chance we're in a simulation right now. Not very comforting. And I'm beginning not to like these odds very much. I have one more clip here, guys, about speculating, because once you establish this kind of probability, the mind starts to wander a little bit. Here we go.
I mean, you could speculate. You could imagine that there is this super intelligent entity that creates these simulations in order to predict if there are